It is the stated policy of this administration and the United States of America to return American astronauts to the moon within the next 5 years.
That was Vice President Mike Pence last month talking about the Trump administration's goal for a return to the moon by 2024. This echoes a call made by President John F. Kennedy in a 1961 speech to Congress.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth. Let it be clear.
Kennedy's challenge, I'm getting goosebumps, set off a race to put a man on the moon before the Soviet Union. Nearly 8 years later, more than 500 million people worldwide watched as Neil Armstrong and the Apollo 11 crew achieved that goal.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
With the 50th anniversary of the moon landing coming this July, historian Douglas Brinkley tells the backstory of the mission in his new book, American Moonshot, John F. Kennedy and the Great Space Race. Douglas Brinkley joins us at the table. Doug, good morning.
Good morning to you all.
Now, those were goosebumps. Those words were goosebumps.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's why we study history. This is an amazing story. But it's a lot different than this story today. Does the administration have a shot the way John Kennedy did?
John Kennedy was a great salesperson for space. I teach at Rice University. On September 12, 1962, he gave that amazing speech. We choose to go to the moon, you know, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. And he tied why we go to the moon into science education, math education, history of exploration, Christopher Columbus, Lewis and Clark. Vice President Pence is talking Huntsville, which, while good, it didn't have that inspirational, aspirational tone. I think the Trump administration will have to sell going back to the moon a little more vigorously than they have thus far.
And let me ask you this. Kennedy also had the Cold War. And so how did that help in both in the specific space race, but more broadly, and how does the lack of that affect our politics today?
The Cold War is everything about going to the moon because in 1957, the Soviet Union put the Sputnik satellite up. And alarm bells ran all over America. We're losing the space race. We're losing satellites. We're losing an ICBMs. And there's a missile gap. The big cheerleader of a missile gap was young John F. Kennedy, a senator. He built the missile gap and the space gap that Eisenhower was asleep at the wheel as a campaign pledge. So when he runs in 1960, he's talking about space a lot. In fact, he tells Nixon in one of the debates, you told Khrushchev at the kitchen debate that you want America's #1 in appliances. I'll take my TV in black and white, thank you. I want to be #1 in rocket thrust.
So what did he see that others didn't, Doug, back then? And how big of a sell was it? And because it cost a lot of money.
It would have been $180 billion in today's dollars.
$180 billion today's dollars, a ton. What he saw, really, he hedged his bets once he became president. But then the Soviets put up Yuri Gagarin, and they put the first human in space on Kennedy's watch. But then Kennedy, on May 5th, 1961, watched Alan Shepard, the astronaut, Mercury astronaut, go up and down. TV ratings bonanza. Kennedy noticed television was his medium, and that every one of those Mercury launches during Kennedy's presidency, whether it's Gus Grissom or John Glenn or Wally Schirra or Scott Carpenter, everybody would watch. It became must-watch TV, and Kennedy starts identifying the astronauts as my space corps, my elite group, Kennedy astronauts. And also, you know, FDR had the New Deal, had the Grand Coulee Dam and WPA bridges and the like. Eisenhower built the interstate highway system, St. Lawrence Seaway. Kennedy's infrastructure became high-tech, technology corridors. So my book talks about how the southern states started tracking all this NASA money, hundreds of millions of dollars, billions, pouring into places like San Antonio for space medicine, or Houston manned space, Huntsville, Alabama for rocketry, Brevard, North Carolina for star-watching
states that were
Florida.
politically important that Kennedy needed. Let's talk about today with NASA canceling an all-female spacewalk next week because they didn't have 2 medium-sized spacesuits for the women. Shouldn't NASA make this return to the moon, this next moonshot, about having women, the first woman on the moon?
Absolutely. And back in the day, Edward R. Murrow of CBS fame was promoting having somebody who either an African-American or Latino-American, because Murrow said most of the world isn't white, and we're sending only white astronauts up. What a big thing if America could put a non-white astronaut up. They didn't listen to that. All of the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo astronauts were white men, but they had trained 13 women known as the Mercury 13. They were trained in New Mexico by Dr. Randy Lovelace, passed every test, endurance test with flying colors, really tough. Great pilots, but in the end, NASA said, no, we're not going to put a woman into space. So the Soviets beat us with the first woman in space. But we got Sally Ride.
Yeah.
We got Sally Ride in 1983.
And a whole new crop of
then now women galore are entering.
Well, white men, as you know, are everywhere, so it's good that they're including other people in this game.
Yes, they are including it.
Well, Douglas Brinkley, you've done it again, really.
Yes, you have.
Beautifully done. American Moonshot. So much more here that we didn't get to talk about, but that's a tease to read the book.
Yes.
Right?
You're welcome, Douglas Brinkley.
Yeah, thank you.
And it's on sale now.